Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. Today's conversation takes us to Sydney, Australia, where we're joined by one of the country's leading fashion photographers, Julie Adams. While widely known for her work in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Glamour, Marie Claire, and others, what we're talking about today is her personal project titled This Is Me. Starting a few years ago, Julie hosted a series of portrait sessions in beach shacks around Sydney. Women of any age were invited to show up, model for an unretouched photograph in their swimsuit, and share some of their own reflections about body image. What unfolded was truly remarkable.
Yes, women got real. They got vulnerable. And Julie photographed them in their full, joyful glory. She has since photographed hundreds of women for the project, and her book was published in 2020. Julie reflects with us today on how what started as a body image project targeted at young women quickly evolved into a more sophisticated reflection of womanhood that appeals across generations. The collection of images is beautiful. The sentiments that women shared are incredibly powerful, and Julie's own behind-the-scenes story is inspiring. Take a listen.
Julie, thank you so much for being with us today from Sydney, Australia. We're excited to dive into this conversation.
Oh, hello. Lovely to be here. Thanks, guys, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd like to start at the beginning of your career. Give us a little bit of the background of how you ended up in photography.
I think I always loved photography ever since I was like a child and wanted to be a photographer, and kind of got my first camera from Kmart, I think, as a young teen. But it did take me a little bit of time. I took it until I moved to London, and I started working at this wonderful advertising agency in London called Bartle Bogle Hegarty, which it was in the 90s, and it was full of amazing creative people. And it was there, doing a role actually in account management, that I suddenly went, what am I doing? I've always wanted to be a photographer. So I quit the advertising world and started in London as a photography assistant. So I assisted in London for about 5 years, and then I got my first break working in fashion, shooting for the Independent newspaper. And then from there, I went and also studied in Florence. I have a real love affair with Italy. And then...
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Take me back.
And then it started from there. I started after the Independent, I started working for other glossy magazines, and my career's taken me kind of everywhere we moved to New York for a few years, but I've traveled everywhere with work, from, Kenya to, everywhere, Morocco, the States. So it's been wonderful. So it all started in London.
So you took a bit of a risk taking that leap out of advertising and into photography, which is not an easy industry for a lot of people, but it seems like it really has paid off for you, because now you have photographed for some of the biggest fashion magazines, as well as actors and celebrities and models. And then you created the This Is Me project. And it's a pretty big departure from the fashion magazines and from where you started out in your career and where you really made it in your career. So we want to understand what the motivation was, and where did the idea come from?
I think I'm a mum. I've got 2 little girls, and I was becoming increasingly aware of body image. My eldest daughter, who's now in high school, but even in year 4, she started, which was be around the age of 10, she started talking to me about, things about her body, or people commenting on her body. And I just thought, hang on a minute, these conversations are starting now. This is like really alarming. It also made me reflect on when I was growing up, and I had friends who had eating disorders and how they began, or mental illness. And how it began, and no one really kind of noticed, but things could start from the smallest comment somebody says to you about yourself, and then you start beating yourself up. And I guess I started thinking I play a role in this image-based world that is increasingly influencing our children, social media, all the images they see, the retouching. What can I do that's really real, basically? How can I refreshingly remind young women, which did actually become more sophisticated and ended up reminding women of all ages, but how can I remind young women that we're all beautifully unique just the way we are, and really the best version of ourselves is to just be ourselves, and that's kind of where it came from. I really wanted to celebrate all women rather than singling people out, and so I did a project open to the general public because I really wanted anyone who wanted to celebrate themselves to come along and get involved.
I want to reflect on a few things there, which really speak to me. One is that both Cassie and I have daughters. They're very little still. They're both under 5 years old. And it's unfathomable for me to think about a 10-year-old girl already coming home and questioning issues relating to her body. That is extremely disturbing. It maybe shouldn't be surprising given the society that we live in, which really has so much of a focus on body image, particularly for women. But I never think about it for such a young child like that. And I want to know how you responded as a mother, but I also, just before you answer that question, I want to kind of commend you for taking a step back to reflect the fact that, yes, you as a photographer in the fashion industry do play a part in that, to kind of put that mirror up to yourself, that what is your responsibility in perpetuating some of these unrealistic issues around body image for women, and to kind of combat that in that way, I think is really commendable. So I appreciate that. So then going back to my question is really, when your daughters came home and started talking about that at such a young age, what did you say to them?
Well, I'd noticed a few things, even earlier on, and it wasn't them. It wasn't coming from her. It was coming from playground chat, And the first time, she just had such a brilliant response herself that I just thought, well, you've got this,
It's the best when they can say it better than you can, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you're all over that. But then when it happened again and I asked her how she felt, a little boy said something to her in the playground, and I asked her how she felt. I asked her what she responded to this little boy, and she said, well, I just said, okay then. And he made a comment that she looked fat, which she certainly wasn't. And she said, oh, I just said, okay then. And I thought, oh, that's not cool. No, that's not cool at all. One, you're not. Two, why is this going on in the school playgrounds? And anyway, I went up and gently spoke to the teacher and just said, just so you know, this is happening. And she said, I can't believe anyone would ever say that to her. This is and I said, well, it is happening, and it does, these things can have a really long-lasting effect. So they can't, it can't go on. So it really started for me from that moment, and I actually started the project then because it took me a few years. I basically was just kept an open line of communication about it, and there's no truth in it. I think people, it's so nasty, this commenting, even at a young age, people feeling that they can comment on other people, and it happens on the playground, it happens within families, it happens within friendships, and sometimes I don't think people even realize they're being hurtful.
Yeah, you got to question the where that came from for the little boy, because as a 10-year-old boy, does he really understand the implications of what he's saying? Does he understand what it means, how it lands? Where does it come from for him? And then it kind of peels back so many different layers of the family, the media, society, where he's getting that from, that would then come back to her. Yeah.
And I probably reacted I wanted to do something proactive, but I also was probably digging into my own past